So not so long ago, you went to was it a retreat or a training about natural horsemanship?
Yes, it was a retreat about natural horsemanship, but you can do it as a training as well. But for me, it was a retreat, so I had different sessions of natural horsemanship. Um, yeah, and it is mostly about communication with horses. So you're not immediately riding a horse, but you are trying to build a partnership with the horse um, in a way that's very natural. And for that, you really need to understand a bit like how does a horse function in nature and understand how they are communicating with each other. And then you try to communicate in the same way with the horses.
And it's like, is riding horses still a part of it because of the
It's
name,
still
or
a
is it
part
a
of it.
completely different thing?
No, it's still a part of it, but it's in a way that you do it so you don't need to use force to ride your horse. You try to make it like that, that you have a partnership, that the horse would choose you as a leader. Like in a herd, they always try to find a leader and they
Hmm.
always like test the leader. So if you want to lead the horse is going to test you and challenge you all the way because he wants to be sure that you are a good leader.
And well, first there, because every time I hear something, I have a lot of different questions at the same
Yeah.
time. Okay, so force in this situation, is that using like the heels or using a whip, or what
Yeah.
at which point would you call it force?
So actually, like every type of tension, the horse will always try to avoid that.
Mm-hmm.
So if you even put a little bit of pressure with your heel on the horse,
Yeah.
it's gonna turn away from it. And that's why you use it to make a turn or things like that. But if you release the tension, then the horse feels, okay, this is what I should do. And
So
this is actually like the biggest reward you can give the horse. But in many horse riding, you keep on using the tension and then it stresses out the horse. You understand?
and okay, yes. So normally when you ride, so just whatever without natural, it's just called horse riding, I guess. Basically, you are steering the horse where to go or how to move by adding tension, and then as a reward releasing it when it does the thing that you intended the horse to do. Okay. And
Yeah,
so
I
in
think
natural horsemanship, there is zero use of tension then?
well, there is use of tension, but a small amount. And I think the difference is that normally, or in many horse riding, you have like this power, and you are above the horse in the hierarchy. And here you try to create like this partnership of equality. And for example, you use tension, but you use it in different steps. And the better you know the horse, in the end, you should be able to just like breathe or have a little bit of, for example, lifting up your finger, and the horse already knows, like, okay, I should do that. But so you always use four steps of tension, and if it doesn't listen to the first one, you go to the second one, to the third one, to the fourth one, and the moment it acts like a little bit on it, you immediately release all the tension.
Okay, so you start with the lowest tension possible.
Yeah.
And so I still have a lot of questions about your first sentence. Okay, so that was another thing. The point of natural horsemanship is for the horse to choose you as a leader.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and you also mentioned equality instead of hierarchy. But if it chooses you, then in that relationship, for that moment, there is a hierarchy, right? It chooses to follow you. So in that moment, you could still see that as like vertical a little bit. But what you mean is that instead of choosing you as a leader because it knows that if it doesn't, you are gonna annoy it with tension, it chooses you from an equal level, like, oh, I
Yeah.
know both of us and I like you to tell me where we will
You
go. Or
can you can follow a leader out of fear, or you
Mhm.
can follow a leader because you want to follow the leader and you trust the leader. And
Yeah.
it's a big difference when you put someone all the time in a position of fear, then it's just frightened to do something else. And
Yeah.
it's way different than you say like, wow, you're a good leader, I'm gonna follow you.
And this is why I'm super interested in it, because everything that you've said so far, I imagine like could be applied to people, and
Mm-hmm.
like it could be applied to a society, but it could be applied to a father or a person working, well, like leading a team at work, or it could even be at a very small scale be applied to friendships or relationships where you make a decision. So
Yeah,
I
I
love to
think that's
hear.
super interesting
Yeah.
because I had it also when I was doing it, that very often it reminded me on situations that I had with other people. And I think that was super interesting to always make this translation. Um,
And
for
do you have
example,
examples?
on
Yeah.
a certain moment, um, yeah, I don't know if I should call it a teacher, but the person that was helping me with these sessions, she was talking about horses that are used to, for example, carry kids in a certain route or in a certain path, and they are very good at that. They are
Always
very,
in the same
yeah,
location,
always
like
the same
it.
location, always the same road, and they are super good at that. But the moment something happens and you need to take a sideway, the horse will be freaking out because it's not used to do something else. And that's that reminded me really on yeah, on COVID actually. We are so used to have the routine and do everything the same. And the moment something is changing, no one knows what to do anymore. And to me, that
Yeah.
was very interesting because she says, like, I like that my horses are stubborn and trying different things. I don't want them to know the way. I want them to know how to walk. So
Or find
it
a new
makes
way.
them used to cross branches and everything that is natural. So they shouldn't think about, and many times people take care of the horse like, oh yeah, you should pass this because here's a branch. And in this natural horsemanship, as you're if you're riding, you're saying, okay, we are going that direction, and how we do it, that's the responsibility of the horse. I'm not taking care of the ground and looking like, oh, there's a branch, there's water, there's that. The horse will find it out how they will cross it because they are used to do that, and I will find out how we navigate. But if a horse is not used to do that and really is used that someone else is taking care to look at the road, then they will freak out if something else happens.
So the idea is that by letting the horse figure out, like, so you tell it, oh, we go straight, and if straight the road is full of like nails, then it or screws, it has to avoid that. So
Mm-hmm.
the idea is that in that way the horse becomes more confident and less anxious in general.
Yes, and
Okay.
also this was about the equality. I have to trust the horse as well, that the horse will find out how to avoid these nails.
Hmm. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that
Okay.
means like the horse can trust me in navigation, but I can trust the horse and how to walk.
Instead of stepping in at every moment and
Yeah.
say like, yeah, but that is so. Did you have moments when um that reflect like where you found it hard not to tell the horse, like, oh, there's something there?
Um, I think not because I'm not so good at riding yet.
Because I
So
I
I was
noticed
supposed to
that.
be like, okay, it's fine. But yeah, it's an interesting mirror all the time. For example, I liked to be very close to my horse, to be really so I could touch it. And then on a certain moment she said like, okay, you should step away a bit and you should make sure and tell the horse as well that she can trust you even if you're further away. And then I felt like, oh, interesting. It's also me that want to be close. It's the horse, but
Yeah.
it's also me. So this was something that I felt like, okay, I keep the horse close, and it's more for me maybe than for the horse itself. So
Because you just want to be close to someone, or
yeah, I guess it
yeah,
was like that. Mm-hmm.
yeah. That's so. This for me the same. Like every relationship that you have with other people is also like a mirror. I like your example because I never thought about that. Like if you would be smothering somebody with love and then you take a step back and you are just normal, then that person may think, oh, what's wrong? When there's
Mm-hmm.
nothing wrong, like maybe you're just more appropriate. Um, yeah, I asked about the anxiety. No, not anxiety. Like worrying. Like, oh no, the horse is gonna do it wrong because I noticed I have that happens in two directions for me. So if I am leading someone and letting them do everything, but I'm just setting direction. So like you say, more like natural leading. Then I have the instinct the moment I see, oh, they're gonna do this wrong, like then to rescue them. So like, oh, don't
Mm-hmm.
worry, here. That's how you. And
Yeah.
yeah, but I also know when somebody does that with me, I feel really bad about that. Like I get angry about it because I feel like, well, I know that I do things differently than most people. So and what matters is what the outcome is. So if you let me do my thing, the outcome would be there, but now you interrupted. So I see in both directions that happening, and I'm paying attention to that now, like to lead people, leaving them more free, but also if somebody does that with me, to realize like they're not actually saying that I'm doing it wrong. They are just having trouble leading while also letting go in this moment. So I can empathize with both. And then now I
Yeah.
think of riding a horse, and it's
I
like, yeah, the horse is also
had both
carrying you.
situations, indeed. I had both situations. I do remember that on a certain moment she told us like horses are still animals that are threatened. Like they are
Mm-hmm.
not how you say it? They are the prey, or how you say
They're
it?
what?
When they are like they used to flight for other animals.
They're you. And
I
sorry, I'm
always forget these words.
okay. What's in another language? Any other language for it?
um,
I know what you mean.
yeah,
Prey. They're not.
yeah, the prey, and
They
what's
are
the other?
prey.
They are prey, and what's the
Okay.
other?
Predator. A
Predator.
predator is what
Yeah,
it's.
so we
Yeah.
are still predators and they are still prey. So
Yeah.
what do? They are used to think like more like in a zigzag, because they used to check everything all the time to check if there are predators.
If something's
So
coming. Yeah.
yeah, so if they are not at ease, what happens? They will walk like that. And when you're on a trail ride, you feel like, come on, you should walk straight, because we are predators and we can think straight. We just see something and we just can straight attack it. We don't need to check everything. We
Yeah.
can just attack. So that's a different way of thinking. And when we were on a trail ride, I noticed indeed, like, oh, okay, I wanted to go and in a straight line. And in the moment she told me that, then I noticed, like, okay, so this means the horse is just not feeling safe now. I will make sure that it can zigzag because it's the nature,
Mhm.
but I also need to take more leadership now, and make sure that the horse can trust me in this.
That
So
if
that
it
was
goes
an
straight, you will make
interesting
sure it's
moment.
safe.
Yeah,
Yeah.
if I will give it safety, then it will follow me in a more straight line. But that was something that I felt like, oh, you're doing it differently, and I want to adjust it. And then I noticed, okay, but it's natural to do it my way for this animal. And then there was the other position, which was a very interesting moment for me. We were going on a trail ride, and on a certain moment we had to pass a territory with many horses. So they were 5, 6 horses barking and trying to protect their place, and we had to pass it. And I was a bit more tense and a bit more like, okay, I should be more alert. But I trusted completely that we would pass this. But it was a very strange day. There was like, yeah, you could feel that it would thunder, and so there was some heaviness in the air. Every one of us was already a bit like on the edge. And then I wanted to really stay calm and take my time to guide that horse through it. But then on a certain moment, the person in front of me stopped and said like, yeah, you should relax, you should breathe. And I felt so many like tension in his voice and in his whole nonverbal
He was
communication.
not relaxing and breathing.
Yeah, and I was really becoming stubborn, and I said like, yeah, but I was relaxed. And other people also tried to help me, and I felt like, to me this wasn't an emergency situation. I just knew my horse was acting on it, and I would stay calm, and I could have talked it through it. But everyone was acting so tense on it that I was tense as well. And then he had to take the reins and guide me through it. And I felt stubborn the whole rest of the trail ride, because I was like, I wanted to do it my way. I wanted to try it, and I didn't get the chance.
Yeah, so you were feeling like the horse in that
Yeah.
situation. Yeah.
And it was
I
really
get that.
interesting, because afterwards I was like, what happened over there? I was really trying to understand, and I noticed that it also had to do with the leadership within us as humans in our group. There was someone taking the lead, which I didn't give the leadership.
Because
I didn't
you didn't trust
leader.
him, and you didn't trust him because he sounded anxious.
He sounded anxious, and he was giving me orders about nonverbal communication and my body, which I saw with him that he was not connected with his body. So I felt like,
Yeah.
I'm not taking orders from someone that doesn't seem to
Yeah.
be in line with what, like at that moment for sure. But and I noticed that if someone else of the group would have given me orders, that I felt like, oh, she was very peaceful, I would have trusted everything she said. So it was very interesting to have, like, because horses are always challenging each other in, are you a good leader? Okay, I'm gonna challenge you again and again and again. And they always play those games. And during this whole period, I could really see how also we as humans are playing games all the time to like test each other. Like, can I give you the leadership? Do I trust you as a leader? No, I want to be higher. Oh no, I want to be higher. We had those games all the time, but we are not like conscious about it anymore.
Yeah, I find it very interesting how that goes. Um, I'm also gonna try to remember some things because you said more interesting things that I want to ask about. Um, yeah, actually, I was just reminded by your story. I was on a plane earlier this year, and the plane I think was mostly non-Spanish speaking people, but the pilot gave like a message in Spanish through the speakers, and it was in a very like turbulent moment, and he sounded super, like the way he spoke, super anxious, but it wasn't like a bad message. There was no big problem. um, and then immediately you could tell that everyone changed. They started being like panicky, like, oh, I don't trust this person to lead us anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But I like what you say that about constantly playing those games. I'm trying to think. There are like 100 levels at which this happens, probably, because you have
Mm-hmm.
groups, you have people, you have then like within a gender, between genders, and it would all happen in a different way. Um, and I like, and with humans it gets way more complicated because when you speak of like just that simple, like, okay, they always a horse will always test, are you good leader, then I immediately think, okay, that's what women do to men as well
Mhm.
in dating or relationships. Not on purpose, right? It's not like you're making plans, but it happens, like the little moments where you're checking, okay, is he actually able to,
Yeah.
can I not it's not able, can I trust him?
Can I
That's my,
trust
it's more
you?
about trust, right?
I think
And
it's a
then,
lot about trust, indeed.
but I've never felt that happening with a male friendship, for example. But what I do see is that, like, okay, you have a group of men. That generally you do have, and this is not like at work even. It is at work, but I mean at anything. It could be just a group of friends. You're a group of friends sitting in the living room, and playing activities. And without knowing it, everyone has kind of a list, like, oh, if this guy would come with an idea of what we would do, we would trust him. If he doesn't come, then if that guy comes, we would trust him. But like if you're the fifth on that list and you come, then people may first think, no, we'll first see if like one of the higher
Yeah,
ups,
they will
and
wait.
yeah, it could be the same idea, but it's like how degrees of how much do you trust people's
Yeah.
decision making for the group, and then so I don't see these tests happening if it's only men, but what you do see is that like it's as if men are playing games to like fake their way up the trust. Like, oh, I'm gonna say something that makes that guy seem less trustworthy. So then, if I have an idea, it will be like considered more highly. For
Yeah. Or
example, or I'm gonna build myself, like make myself more present in the group. Like everyone has all kinds of different strategies, which usually don't really work because underneath we're still animals and we feel it just like a horse. But it's really funny too once you, because you can look at interactions in a group at so many different perspectives, and then maybe you come back from a retreat, you take on that perspective, and you see like, huh, everyone's like, you cannot turn it off. Everyone's doing these little things to
yeah.
test each other the whole time.
Or for example, in the situation you are talking about, like what happened if this first leader is failing in one of those things, or what
Yeah.
happens if one of those other people are out of the group? How does it change? And then immediately, if one of the strong leaders is away, you can feel this game happening very
The power
clearly. Then
vacuum.
you should, like,
Yeah.
you're all testing, like, okay, there's a different situation, so we need to find a new balance. Can I be high, can I be low? Like, you can feel it in a group happening, and I think that's super beautiful to see.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, I also felt how we are so blind for that. Like, we pretend that this intuition thing is not happening, and we just talk and talk and pretend like, yeah, no, because we have the control, we are humans, we don't do those
But
things.
that's not true, right? Because your
No.
behavior still
And
comes from there
in a
as, yeah.
way, it's super funny to see how we are trying to mask that and to be like very polite or things like that. But even in those things, it can be, for some people, being polite is very important to have, like, to be as a leader. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
interesting also which standards we use.
Yeah, that I so and in reality, I think obviously we can make conscious choices because that's part of how we are as humans. But the majority of our behavior still comes from the instinctual, but we cover it up with all these rules, and that really made me think of what you said about a horse walking straight. And like now I think of, oh, like what you said, oh, a leader disappears and then you see all the games happen,
Mm-hmm.
and that's really beautiful. And all the same things that are really beautiful about us, like to see, they can also lead to really bad things in certain situations.
Mm-hmm.
So like let's say in multiple Middle Eastern countries, there is a dictator, horrible dictator. Every and But there is some stability. It's like a bloody and stability, but people know that's the guy who is
Mm-hmm.
making decisions, and he gets removed, and then you see those same games happening, but it's
Yeah,
actually people like shooting each other, scaring each other, like all these. But it's the same thing. It's just that the guy
same
left the
thing.
room. Well, now who do we trust? Or and if there's nobody to trust, then we go back to kicking the horse with our heels, right? And
Yeah.
that's what everyone's just doing. Um, and you were talking about the horse that so naturally they move zigzag,
Hmm.
and whatever you would ever tell your horse, if it could listen to your words, right? It knows that as a horse, you can tell me walking straight is better, but this is the smartest thing to do. I know it. I've been a horse for millions of years, at least my genes, right? This is how we survive. And humans also have their survival mechanisms, and then some of them are not so pretty.
Hmm.
So in a way, like, okay, that horse needs to trust you enough to know if she tells me that I'm gonna walk straight to get there, okay, I will do that. But to do so, I am ignoring my wisdom from millions of years that all my horsey ancestors have taught me. So all these rules like politeness or a government imposing a government just saying you cannot kill people because in
Hmm.
one of our survival mechanisms is killing people if that's really needed, if someone's threatening us or um, so these go against our nature, and then we say okay, we're gonna do this straight and we're gonna fill in all the forms and what because you that only works if you trust your government enough that that will make me more safe than if I don't.
Yeah.
And some things are very obvious. Oh, if we agree that murder is bad, then great. I will also have less chances of dying. So you put your trust in that straight way, but in nature you would kill people. So because that's how it happens. I find it really interesting to see like
Yeah,
that
I
as a
was
parallel.
thinking about why it is that a horse is walking like that because their eyes are at the side and they cannot
Mm.
watch both things at the meantime. So they go to one direction to see that side, they change direction to see the other. But for example, if they want to drink water and they are in a herd, yeah, they have someone else looking at that moment. They have someone looking there. They have someone
Mm.
looking there. So they like divide these tasks and they can be safe. And then on the moment that they are not safe, they feel like they should keep them safe their own. This is my interpretation. I'm not 100% sure,
Yeah, but
but I
it's
guess
that
it's
makes
how
sense.
it works. And for us, it's the same. Like, okay, our eyes are in front. We cannot watch the back and every
Hmm.
part. So we are walking straight. And yeah, I think if we are in a group, then we won't check all the time. How is it? Like, if you don't feel safe on a certain place, you will always be checking all of your
Yeah,
directions. If you're
yeah.
in a group, not you just follow. You feel like, okay, the ones at the front is gonna check the front. But I think it's interesting when you what you tell about the government, because when you talk about the government, then I think they are not my leaders. I wouldn't think about
Well,
them as my leaders.
that's how you think you feel, but you still pay taxes. you
Yeah,
know.
I
So,
still act like they are
so
my leaders and they are
okay.
making decisions that I'm not making. But when I think about leaders and how I should live my
Hmm.
life personally,
Oh, like that, like
yeah,
philosophically, or telling, yeah.
yeah, like they are my leaders, but really in a very practical way. And I'm like, okay, they protect me in many things. They make sure that I can be ill, that I can go to school, that I can have
Yeah.
a job. So in many things they are my leaders, but in the meantime I wouldn't look at them
But if
like
you
that.
would, if they wouldn't provide you with all that safety, there's probably a lot of rules that you're now following that you wouldn't.
Yeah.
So in a sense, you are trusting them that they will lead you to safety. And I think like what you said now with the drinking, that's a great example of like you can see that thing is like culture. Oh, if we're like culture binds us as a group, so then we're part of it, and then we are safe and we don't need to go like that the
Mm-hmm.
whole day because we are a collective. And that's again something really beautiful because it enables us to not. It's basically what changes us from prey to predator. Because if you're
Mm-hmm.
entirely alone, you are a prey, and you would indeed have to go that way,
Yeah.
just like the horse. But at the same time, it also enables us to do really bad things
Mm-hmm.
because, like you say, we're blindly following that as part of the culture. Because you become a predator now.
Yeah.
It's like, and when you mentioned the COVID thing, like that story, I also had, because you mentioned that right together with the story of the horses walking straight, and I
Yeah.
thought, yeah, so what happens there? There's something new. People are used to always walking straight. Not everybody, right? But there are a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people who blindly follow rules, if they are rules of politeness, rules of the government, whatever. We're supposed to be protected. We trust
Mm-hmm.
this, and our life's gonna be nice. And then something unexpected comes, and they're like, "Oh no, we can't trust this anymore. We're gonna fight over toilet rolls and do
Yeah.
stupid stuff." And it's because then you go back to your instinct, like you
Yeah.
stop for a moment, and until they feel like, "Oh yeah, we can
You
trust our
can trust
leader,"
them.
and then the behavior normalizes. So this is like a moment where it proves like, no, you've always still been a wild horse underneath.
Yeah.
You just tell yourself you're not, but the moment something unexpected happens, you freak out. And if you're not aware of you being actually a wild animal in reality, then you may not even understand why you do those things, and it's way more dangerous. Then you lose control because then you panic and you just do a
Yeah.
bunch of
I
things.
think so because you have never been connected to that intuition. You just did it because that was
Yeah.
like, but when you consciously know you are following something out of intuition, that's nice. You can keep on following.
Yes,
That's no
there's nothing
problem
wrong
in
with that.
that. If you're
Exactly.
conscious about it, it's nice, and you will know like if something else happens, like, oh, okay, it's my intuition taking over because apparently there's something that we're not used to. But then you can be conscious about it, and then I think it's completely fine.
And has that, so dealing with the horses and realizing, okay, so you say that you've learned a lot from that about how humans interact with each other, like the testing, and um, have you also looked at it as in, this is how my rider, like my more conscious mind, interacts with my animal inside of me, like seeing it as that and seeing yourself as the animal,
Ah.
and how those relate to each other?
No, I didn't really think about that yet. But there was a moment, uh, very like late after the retreat, that I noticed again, like I have been very ill and I feel that the connection with my body is not super good. And then on a certain moment, I was questioning, like, okay, what if I would approach my body as a horse? Maybe
Mm-hmm.
I would have a completely different connection with it. Because if I approach a horse that I'm very like sensitive, okay, how is the horse? I want to get to know you. I'm going to do this and that. And I will show a lot of empathy.
Mm-hmm.
And to my body, I was like, just no, you should. I was putting more pressure on my body, like, no, you should do this and that and that. So I think it was interesting to have this indeed, this internal connection, having positioned like outside
Mm-hmm.
to really have it clear, like this is how you communicate with yourself. But I didn't think about it like internally completely.
Yeah, sometimes you learn things, but they don't come in this in the form of words, like your
Yeah.
experience. And when you say pressure on your body, do you mean like pressure of it to behave a certain way? Like, oh, when I eat this, I want you to be okay with it, or do you mean pressure to perform? Like, I want you to be able to run every morning, or in which way would you put pressure?
I would put pressure in a way like indeed more about food. If you eat this, you should still be present in any way.
Present? Like is
You should still be able, like if I would eat, for example, I cannot eat gluten, but if I would eat gluten, then I would like, if you think about a horse, almost slap my body internally, like, come on, you should be
able
strong.
to process this. Yeah.
Yeah, you should be able to cross this point.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
I think more of that, while if you would just trust your body that it can go its own way, that it's completely different.
And you mean it going its own way, so that could take two shapes, right? It could mean, okay, you just say this, oh, I get to know you. Oh, you don't like when I give you this food, so how about I just don't give it to you anymore? Or do you mean like I will eat it and maybe that will make me feel bad the next day, but that's part of the process for it to just remain healthy? Like how
I
do you
think
see
it
that?
can be both. I think it can be like, if I think about leadership, you should get to know the people you are working with. So you should know the strengths and the needs, and you can sometimes challenge it, and sometimes you can put it in a comfort zone. So in terms of food to my body, it could be, okay, I will give you something that I know my body likes, or I will challenge it a bit and give it
Okay.
something that's not perfect, but maybe see how you can still deal with it.
Yeah,
So
like discover what, like you don't want to over pamper it, but you want to discover like this is kind of the edge of
yeah,
performance. Yeah.
yeah, I think so. And I think until now I didn't really give my body the chance to completely find out what it likes and doesn't like
Yeah.
in terms of
Yeah.
food.
I like that. It's so even mentally, I always think the first or the most important relationship that you have to develop in life is the one with yourself, like getting to know yourself, understanding yourself. Because if you don't, like, you don't even know, like, yourself is the one that relates to others, and if you don't know it,
Mm-hmm.
then, well, what are you gonna do? Not much.
Yeah,
You're always just gonna be saying stuff and not knowing why you're saying it. Um, and the same with so that you can look at that in leadership as well. Like, oh, you learn to lead yourself. You learn to understand, well, what are the things that motivate me? What are the things that I don't like, and how can I get myself to go where also I want to go? And then with your body, it's kind of the same thing. Like you, oh,
yeah.
well, this is what you are in right now, so you better get to know it and learn to to understand it and lead it. But you know that it's also wild, so it also has its own will, like you say. Cannot
And
just
I think it's interesting because when we talk about it, I notice that in terms of movement, I can really be curious and let my body lead and discover what's going on. And but in terms of food, it's something different apparently.
and what is different is it that you want different things from food than your body wants?
Yeah, I think I'm not really willing to truly listen.
Hmm. Why?
I think indeed because it's uh, it's it maybe wants things that are different than I want, and also things that are different than our daily life has to offer. For example,
In
if
this
we're
moment,
talking
yeah.
about gluten, and I love to cook together with friends, I love to go out for dinner. If I want to do that, you always see like, yeah, not possible, not possible, or you need to adjust a lot. Um,
Well, is it only gluten or is
no,
it
and
all?
like it's gluten, and I guess there will be more things than that.
Okay.
And that's the thing that like if you go to a restaurant and you come with a list like, yeah, get
Yeah.
it, that and that and that, then it's not nice anymore to be in a
Yeah.
restaurant.
But then so that's what I was thinking of. So that is kind of annoying if you have to ask, um, yeah, restaurants to change their menu. But if it's just gluten, you can just go to different restaurants.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
most Latin food, not all
Yeah.
of it,
Most
but it's
Asian
made of
food as
corn.
well.
A lot of things made with sushi, like
Hmm.
then it's like, well, very few of these things will contain it,
Hmm.
so you have your wide option. Or you can invite your friends over to cook at home. Like
Yeah.
I used to be in that idea always, like, oh, and this environment that I'm in, it's not allowing me to eat the way I want to eat. But that's not really true. You are not allowed.
No.
Like you can just change your lifestyle to admit it. You could even just say, okay, do I really have to go to restaurants? I go there because I want to eat with the friends,
Mhm.
so I can actually just cook for all of them, and then they have a free meal. Like there's a lot of options.
Yeah.
It just requires like uh, more planning, I guess, with it, because I
Yeah.
also
And
have
I
that
think
in some situations.
also like giving more value and more being more thankful for the fact that we are taking nutritions and that we are having food. While now it's more something, food can give me structure. It's those days of those moments of the days that are more fixed and that I know, like, okay. And I don't like to think about food too much. I like it to be my
Okay.
structure and my routine. And I noticed that it's also because I like to do many things and to move a lot around. On other moments these are like the points that I like not to think too much about, so I can have more space to
Yeah.
explore other things.
So
And
that's the reality of it. It's
yeah,
like, yeah. So
so it's
it's easier
also
for that to
me.
stay as it is now, so that you
Yeah,
can, yeah.
so it's also me that needs to, or that would be good if I would really take time to have another connection with food and see it more as a yeah, give it more space somehow.
See, but I find it super fascinating because you look at yourself, and I don't really know who the writer is in this in yourself, but there is one, right? And it's not
Mhm.
just writing your body; it's writing all these different aspects of you. So your body's like, no, we don't want this gluten. Let me. But then it also has to write. I don't know what it is, like your mind or something, and your mind is like, yeah, okay, but we want our ease and our structure, so don't make us organize our life around not having gluten right now. So then you figure out, oh, well, what is it getting from me eating this gluten? It's getting consistency and structure. How can I how can I make my mind have that so that it trusts
Yeah,
me as, I don't know who me is, right? But that's a writer. Has trusts me as a leader, that if I don't eat gluten, I will still have my structure and consistency and my time and freedom to move in all those other things. So you're riding two animals within yourself there. You're like
yeah,
figuring this out with.
there is a method that I'm learning and it's called voice dialogue. I don't know if I talked
I
about it with
No,
you.
I imagine it's a bit like a parts integration therapy
It's
kind of
actually what
thing.
you are talking about now.
Okay.
So you can imagine that you have a bus within yourself with all kind of passengers,
Mm-hmm.
and you can be, you as Pepin or as Nina can be in the middle and be the driver, but many times another passenger is taking the lead. And so it can be the one that says like, oh yeah, I want to be free, I don't want to think about food. And there can be another passenger that says like, yeah, but you get more energy if you eat healthy. Like you have all these kind of voices inside your head and inside your bus. And this method is called voice dialogue. And then you go really take time to talk with the passengers that are popping up in a certain situation. And it's super interesting because many times it's a kind of protection of something. So it can be, for example, that one day, I don't know, you were really afraid or you were really shocked because you couldn't take you couldn't do the things that others could do, and you have a part of you that is very traumatized by that. And then there might be another passenger in your bus protecting that and saying like, no, you should go to the restaurant, you should do like everyone else is doing,
Oh,
for example.
because otherwise it means that you're not good enough, and
Or
then you won't.
otherwise it means
Yeah,
that you will feel that hurt again.
yeah,
So we have all kind of defense mechanisms, and it's interesting if you really take time to talk to the passengers that are popping up in a certain situation. You can also notice what hurt is behind it, and then you can try to connect immediately from you as a person to that hurt, instead of
yeah.
having always this passenger taking
And then you need
care
to
of that.
feel the hurt until
Yeah,
you.
and you can
Yeah.
also think about, okay, but how else could I deal with this situation? And then there might be passengers in your bus that you barely know because you never use them.
Hmm.
But if you take them a bit to the front, it's interesting. I really like it
So
to
you're kind
have
of
that.
the leader in the bus, and then there are multiple options. Like you could discover from one passenger, like, oh, well, you've been protecting us from something that the threat doesn't exist anymore, so it's okay, you can chill. Or it could be that
Yeah.
that you still need that protection, but you find like a way to protect it that is more useful for all the people in the bus.
Mm-hmm. And
Yeah.
I think one of the most important things is whatever is popping up, all passengers are valuable because they are, in the end, they will all help you to to survive and to live in a happy way. So
Hmm.
even the worst defense mechanisms, even like if you would kill someone, it will still have some value because it's
Yeah.
protecting
Like,
something. Like this is very extreme, of
yeah,
course,
but it
but
is.
in the end, it's
Yeah.
interesting to really listen. Like, why are you here?
Yeah.
Why are you telling me this in my head?
I had, maybe this is interesting for you because I've had two guests on the podcast that did something similar. Um, so one I think is particularly interesting from you. She would do that with body parts.
Yeah, I did
So you
the
could speak
same.
to your guts or your stomach and then say
Mhm.
that. And then I had another guy that is practicing something called internal family system.
Mhm.
It's basically what you say put into different words. So it's what you're already doing, but there are books about it. So maybe those books have ideas for how to do it, like a specific methodology. Yeah, it's interesting. And I find it really interesting that you have all these worlds inside of you and they
Mhm.
reflect the world outside.
Yes.
Um, and it's always like it goes smaller and smaller and smaller and bigger. Like you, if you can learn to lead what you call those passengers, like that's one thing. If you cannot do that yet, you can never lead a group of people
Yeah.
because they each have their own passengers. Um,
Mhm.
and then on top of that, like, and if you have that knowledge, you can maybe get to understand also what's going on in their buses. But also, all the passengers in your bus could also have their own passengers,
Yeah.
and you really have to talk. So it's like infinity where that happens. But I find it really fascinating also that in in our culture, it also seems that leadership is seen as something like, oh, if you're a leader, then you're great. And it's always seen as that those are the people that are like the best or something. But in
Mhm.
reality, every leader is also kind of sacrificed by the group. Like the only way that you say that everyone says, oh, we're gonna do what where you are leading us to, that also means like, well, we are dumping all our responsibility on you.
Yeah.
If you lead us towards something bad, you're the one that has to go. We did nothing wrong, like because
Mhm.
we just trusted you and you broke that. Well, so it gets it's a very humble thing as well.
Yeah.
And then what I was interesting about is at which point. So this with the horses, you mentioned you start with very little tension, and you increase the tension and you increase the tension. So if you would keep doing that, at some point you end up with a dictator, right? Like if you
Mhm.
would keep doing that, they say, oh, I keep adding this tension and nothing's working. So at some point I'm gonna have to kill everybody until they finally start, um, yeah, following. So where is the point where the tension is too much, and is that then wrong? Like, would you say, oh, at some point, well, I need to put this extreme amount of tension, but it's actually getting the horse to safety?
Mhm.
Or at which point are you doing that because the problem is that you think the horse is not following you, and does that affect it? Like, are there do they react differently to different reasons for putting tension? Is there ever a point where they stop?
I guess yes, but I don't know enough about it. Um, I remember that there was a horse that she told about a horse that once had trying to bite her in her head,
Well,
and then she did something like, if I remember well, every time he was making that movement, putting him alone, or like really have more a strict consequence on every time he did that movement. But within, I think, 1 week, it was gone. So it was, that is something that I remember, but I can't. My horse was really soft, so she always listened very
okay.
easily. I
So you
didn't
never had to
I never had
to
to come to that point, and I can't remember what you need to do if you get to that point. There are situations where you need to be more firm, and it is when you are in danger because of the horse. Then
Mhm.
you need to be very strict and consequent because yeah, your life is in danger. So that's a point where you can be more strict. Um, but indeed it is a thing, like where is this edge of, it's because like
Yeah.
yeah,
And
I
there's
think you
another way
always
where
need
I
to try to see the bigger picture again, and sometimes have others around you that can help you, like now you were too
mm, like you need, yeah, the feedback from
yeah,
everybody, not
and
just the
that's really
subject.
important. Also in leadership, it's important to have other people that you can trust as a leader, to give you feedback.
Yeah. Yeah, I was so usually when you do something that is hurting another person, if you are healthy psychologically, like you can also have a little bit of trauma from hurting someone else. Like
Mm-hmm.
you feel bad about that. And it's another way where I feel like, well, then the leader is not in a privileged position, because if a very highly increased amount of tension is needed to the point where you need to hurt others, um, to achieve that, then basically you are taking that trauma away from the group. You're saying, oh, I
Mm-hmm.
will be the person that does this, so you don't have to deal with that. And then I think, well, then what do traumatized people do over time? Like, that also impacts them. So at some point, anything starting with good intentions could escalate to a point where your leader is so psychologically not sane anymore, that if they don't have that
Mm-hmm.
outside perspective, there would be only PTSD left, which, yeah, is also not gonna be good for the leadership. And I also thought back now of what you were saying, with, yeah, where we were exploring with the horses, and like if they feel the intention. I thought, I used to think as a teenager that I had problems with authority, and then at some point I thought, well, that's not true, because, well, one thing, the reason I thought that was that I would fight with teachers and with police officers and all kinds of that. In every, it would always be a very escalated situation. And so I thought I must have a problem with authority, and I kept thinking that. I thought, well, that's not really true, because I've also had authority figures that I just completely agreed with following. I've had cops that I was friendly to. I've had teachers whom I enjoyed, that was silent, and I enjoyed every word they said. And to me, it was that. So if a person, let's say, if a teacher came and they were highly authoritative and strict, but they came with the intention of, well, you have to listen to me because my thing that I want to achieve is that you all have the best education. They'd be like, oh, well, better listen to him or I'm not getting the best education. They wouldn't say that, right? But that would be the feeling. And then if a police officer would come and be like, I am here to restore the order, like that would be, that's my function. And because of that, you have to listen to me or there would be no order. I don't think I would test them. I would just feel it. Oh, well, then I will follow. But whenever I felt like you are doing something because you want to feel that you are in control, or you want to, or you are like being more firm here, or yelling or using tactics because what you want is confirmation from me that I'm following you, then I would attack them. It wouldn't matter if they
Yeah,
would still have a good lesson or if they would still be doing something that was nice. If they came in with that intention, I would refuse to listen to them. And beyond that, like I would want to not just test, but I would want to show like there is no way that you can control me. The only way that you can control me is if you punch me in the face, and you won't because you are controlled by your rules that you,
yeah.
yeah. And
It,
so it
it's
was
just
it was kind of like that when the tension
in those
got higher.
situations, I could almost like, if you talk about it, feel the fear of the teacher of losing their control, feel the fear
Hmm.
of the policeman of losing their position, and then they would fail in their job somehow. Well, indeed, if you feel that they are not afraid, like they are almost, maybe they are afraid of their leader, I don't know, but you could almost sense some fear. And if you have that, then it's super hard to put trust in someone. If they are doing their job almost with fear, then you feel like, yeah, how could you restore the order if you can hear
Yeah.
almost like raising a voice out of like, yeah, because I wanted to be in order. That is not, it's so different than if a class is like completely in chaos and the teacher is so relaxed and just firm, like, come on
Hmm.
guys, how can we teach things like
Yeah.
that? That's completely different than when you see the panic in their eyes, then you feel like,
Could
yeah,
be.
there's no point.
And do you know where that testing comes from? So did you learn that from the horses? Because for me, I don't. Well, I can think of personal reasons why I wanted to prove that they couldn't control me, but besides that, there's still the instinctual, like everybody testing. Do you know what the function of that is? Is it just to figure out who would be the best person to put in that position, or?
With the horses, they have like 7 or 8 games and they play it almost all the time. They play
Mm-hmm.
those games. And it's just to be sure all the time, like, you are the leader, but are you worth it? Are you worth it? Are you
Okay.
worth it? Because they, in nature, they are in danger all the time.
But if you're not, let's say, well, no, I'm not going to use the word worth it. Let's say you are not fit for that position
Yeah.
in the hierarchy in that point. What do? Like, do they go to another person and test them? Do they become the leader of you? Or how exactly does that play out?
I don't know. But they will just not follow you anymore, I think, as a leader. If I look, for example, in the relationship between me and the horse that I had, on
Mm-hmm.
the moments that I am not giving a clear cue with confidence, the horse would just not follow me and she would do whatever she would feel fits best.
Yeah, but she wouldn't tell you what to do. Would just be like,
No, she
well, I'm
wouldn't
gonna
tell
do
me
my
what to
thing.
do. But for example, it could be that she would come super close and try me to go away, to put me away. And if I'd be like, no, this is my space, you're coming too close, go
Hmm.
back. that's completely different. That's like one of the testing games. And if I would go back, then she would be like, okay, so I can just go wherever I want now. And then she would walk wherever she wants until I am with a lot of confidence, like, no, you stay here, for example. And
Okay.
then she would be like, okay, now I see some clarity. Now I'm gonna follow you. So she keeps on testing. Or she, if there would be someone else picking up, then she would follow someone else, I think.
And so,
So
did
I
you?
think also, for example, in the situation you say
Mm-hmm.
there is a teacher and he is giving a class, and you feel like, no, he came in a way that I don't feel he's a good teacher. Imagine there's another teacher coming in at the same time to just even check something. You would maybe put trust in the other one.
Yeah.
And if he would say like, come on guys, keep quiet, maybe you would be quiet, but not
Hmm.
for the first one, but for the second.
I remember one very specific situation, and I can see now the testing in there. And I was with a group of friends in a park drinking and singing songs. So I guess we were loud. It was like 11 p.m. and two cops came, and the first one came in, and I think, and at that moment we were not loud anymore, but correctly we had been. So whatever reason they came, it was probably a noise complaint about us. We were in a mistake, and it was a birthday party. Yes, and this first police officer came and was like, "Yeah, everybody, shut up. Party's over. There's no time to have fun anymore." And I, I don't know. It was like, and now give all your IDs. And the way that happened was like, well, they're just enjoying the fact that they can say that. So
Mm-hmm.
even though they're right and we should be quiet, so I just said, no. How about you come here nicely and say, guys, people have complained that it's too loud. Please tone it down. You know, like, because we
Mm-hmm.
are having a good night and you are just choosing to come in here and say like, haha, I'm gonna have make them less fun because I'm the boss, so I'm not gonna listen to you. And I use the word arrogant because that was the vibe that it. So then she got pissed and said like, you cannot call me arrogant. So because of so it was clearly a power play. So because of that, I would be like, well, I'll call you whatever you want,
Mm-hmm.
whatever I want. And just like you just chose to not be nice to us, but I don't like it, so I'm not giving you my ID. And then in the end, the other guy just came nicely and like led the whole group to listen to him, and that all got handled. But I still refused to cooperate because I was like, well, I just, I'm not gonna do this unless you admit that you were just trying to enjoy the fact that you are
Mm-hmm.
hey, could waltz in here and do that, and so yeah, that other cop started constantly fighting with me. Her point was that I should apologize, which I was just like, no, you didn't. I asked you to apologize, and I'm fine with you not doing that, but you're not gonna make me do anything. So I was clearly testing that, and then in the
Yeah.
end, the other guy that got everybody to lead, he took me apart and he said, "Look, I understand your point. It wasn't really nice the way she came in, but could you please just go over there and apologize so that we can keep the peace here?" And then I thought, well, now I don't listen to you anymore. I was still very friendly to him. It's like, so you understand this concern, but you still say that I should listen to the person who I think is wrong. Now you're just using your niceness as a tool to get me to comply. So no. And so in both cases, it was like the moment I lost confidence in the fact that they were serving the greater good, in my opinion, from my
Mm-hmm.
perspective at that point, because I was being very childish as well. But that was clearly like testing
Yeah, and
in the
it's
same way.
I think it's interesting because he comes to something like, so we can keep the peace, and in the end, you wanted peace, and she wanted peace, and the group wanted
Yeah,
peace.
so he was actually
So
doing it very
he
well,
was,
but
yeah, he
yeah.
was acting like an interesting way to find that common sense.
Yeah, yeah.
It's true that the moment that someone, because yeah, if she comes in like that, it might also be you. Yeah, you can just feel when it's more like a shape or a form of how a police should act, or like you can feel it when it's more
Yeah, but again, in their
like
place,
her
like,
to the outside world instead of being how she would have liked to be handled. Like she wouldn't do the same, I guess.
no, but she probably also said like, "Oh, here's like a group of hoodlums. I don't know how they're gonna react to me, so I'm going
Yeah,
towards
so
him." With like, so it's
it's like
again
a
like,
protection. Like she
yeah,
creates a distance to protect herself in that way.
yeah,
Like, okay, I'm gonna be more formal, I'm gonna be more strict, so there is a distance so I can put myself safe. And this is how I'm gonna act. And it's interesting because you want to break that distance in a way. It's also something formal, in a way, like we know we can get a fine if we say bad things to policemen, but they don't get a fine if they say bad things to us. So that's also a thing that you were like pointing, like, okay,
yeah,
why she is in a position, so I should say sorry to her. And just from a human perspective, she hasn't been nice to me. So it's
yeah,
not fair that I am the only one that needs to say sorry.
yeah. I get. I mean, you could also now. I'm now as an adult, there would be a way to just quickly deal with that without having to like react in that way. When you were in the leadership position, like let's say successfully, so you get tested, you have your confidence. Did you ever feel like you wanted to test if the horse was still following?
Yeah.
Funny, right? I was now thinking, I wonder if that's where some forms of power abuse come from or corrupt, where people
For me
they ask you to
personally,
do something stupid just to feel their power, but maybe it's that they're also testing their position.
could be. And I'm just like remembering the moments I did that. It
Mm-hmm.
was also for me to check, like, these were moments of checking in. Am I still clear? Am I not running away in pretendance that I'm a good leader and maybe I
Okay.
am not?
So
So
you wanted to confirm that to
I
yourself,
wanted
like,
to also check, like, and adjust, like, if maybe I am not clear anymore, because I can be clear for myself, but maybe I'm not clear for the horse anymore. And is the horse like, I think it was a check-in with the connection also.
so you
And
tested
maybe
it,
that,
but also in service of knowing that you would still lead the horse well for the horse.
yeah, I
Yeah.
think it's partly for the horse to know, am I still a good leader for the horse? But I think it's also maybe a fear of, I don't like, I want also to be with the horse. So I think
Mm.
it's also that, like, still checking in, like, you're still with me, right? You're still with me. So I think that was more my own fear.
And so, ha- do you have moments where you find out, oh, I did this thing to lead them and it works, and then you get a little bit of joy from that, right? Like a moment like,
Mhm.
oh, nice, like I'm improving. And that you did that because it was necessary in that situation. But then afterwards, don't you think I'm gonna try it again, see if it works, like, and also to feel that joy again?
Yeah, sometimes yes. And sometimes you just like, every day is different. So it can be that one day you were doing something that worked out super nice and you feel like, wow, we were in the connection, we could do anything.
Mm-hmm.
And then the day after, you can feel like, okay, there's apparently something inside myself that makes it I'm not that connected here, that I'm not that clear here. And you can feel that she wouldn't follow. So it's interesting to also see that it's not always progress, that every day again or every moment again you need like a little check-in to know how you're doing and what's
Mm.
going on inside you and with what feelings and thoughts and presence you are there, because it will change the way how you will lead or how you will approach the
Mm.
others.
Makes sense because every day you wake up in a different state, slightly different, maybe
Mm-hmm.
1% different, and you tend to think as your place in the hierarchy or in the relationships as permanent, but it's not. It's a static thing. If you are a little bit different, and if that other person is a little bit different, then how do you know that you're still in the same position?
Yeah.
You will affect each other in different ways. So do you think that the testing is also because of that? From both sides, right? From the leader,
Yeah,
from
I
the
think
follower? Like
it's
to check, hey, how are we today?
yeah, I think that's part of it. That part of the testing of like, okay, and it can be something very easy, just like having the same kind of things. For example, just walk next to each other every day as a start can be a very nice check-in to just because every day it's the same action. You can feel more slightly differences. You can see like more subtleties about, okay, how are we today? Ah, this is a little bit different. Ah, this is a little bit different.
Mm-hmm.
While if you do every day something completely else, something completely different, it's harder to have this check-in. I think this is
So
how it was for me, at least.
when I when I hear that, I think that's actually really beautiful. It's like a system in nature between animals, including us. So let's say we were a tribe every day. The best thing for everybody would be if nobody had any emotional attachment to leadership or followership. We're just playing these subconscious tests. In the morning, we go for a walk, and then arises the leader for that day, the person that is best fit,
Mm-hmm.
and that works. And the next morning, that happens again. So that works really well. But if you look at it in general, people in a leadership position, a lot of them are really attached to staying in that position and will exert force in order to stay in that way, force or manipulation or anything of that. Why would that be, considering all the downsides of leadership as well?
Yeah, it's almost like imagine you're working in a team and one day the leader is telling you like today not can someone else take the leadership.
Hmm.
We would all consider it as a failure, like she's not a good leader anymore. Well, I think wow, it's strong as a leader and you can say that, and when you see that someone else is in a very good mood,
Yeah, for
perfect.
me,
I think
learning to say that,
that's part
yeah,
of the leadership, that you can say like, oh, but you're better in this right now. Go ahead.
I
And it's
wasn't
also
able to do that in the past,
yeah,
and then the moment that I was actually unfit and I couldn't say that is when people would lose trust in me.
yeah,
Wait, right? If you would say that, you're on a deeper level to be trusted. Yeah,
yeah, I think so.
but
But
maybe
it's strange because many people would still perceive it, I think, as oh, I don't know if I can trust her every day. But I
right.
think
But
yes,
you
because
could
she
trust that the days you couldn't, she would tell you.
yeah, so
So
that's
it's like
more trust. She would tell you when you shouldn't trust.
yeah, it's
But
weird
yeah,
how a lot of these things, like when you hear them, it's like oh that's so obvious, but it's clearly not because it's like the first time you think about it, you know, or that you
yeah,
think,
it's
oh,
so
I haven't seen
obvious.
that often.
And then you see how our world doesn't function like that.
Yeah, so then I always wonder why is that? so I thought maybe the reason that people in that position like try to stay in there is because sometimes you just need like a long term leadership, like one vision that you move towards. Let's say, oh, our entire tribe's gonna migrate to the other side of the world, and there's a guy that knows the way. Well, that guy's not gonna be in the best condition every day to lead. There will be times that someone else is, but if he um, has this instinct to try to stay in that position, or she, or whomever is doing that, then the chances of us getting somewhere are higher, because maybe if every day there's a different leader, they tell us to go in a different way, and we
Mhm.
just end up not going anywhere. I don't know if this is true. I'm
Yeah.
trying to find an explanation.
Yeah, it can just, I think, if I think about the stepping back, it's so different when you do it in a way like, oh no, I'm stepping back and I'm losing everything. Or if you say, like, okay, I'm consciously giving you now the lead for today, then you're still the leader. You still have like this long term vision and this long
Mm-hmm.
term view. So it's part of your leadership. And it's different than when you really step out of all leadership at that moment.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, you're still like, well, we're
You're
going in
not
that.
cutting
The,
the
yeah,
long-term cord and giving the opportunity to go completely other way. You still see
yeah.
it and as a way like, okay, we go that direction, but now you can be in front.
But it would be great if even long term you could do that, right? That you say, well,
Yeah,
I'm not sure about my direction, so I'm gonna, this is the person who I think has a better
yeah.
direction. Or even make it in like give little aspects, like give aspects away. Oh, I still think I know where we want to go, but I think that this person knows better how to get there or how to survive all
Mm-hmm.
the way there. Yeah,
I think just like a leader doesn't always need to be in front. You can also be in the
of
back
course. Yeah.
leading. And I think it's more about having this leadership in which you can change on what position you are in a group and sometimes put others in front, but somehow you're still leading or still supporting the group.
And when you're with riding with a group of horses, and every horse has its individual leader, do the horses among themselves also have a horse leader that
Yeah,
they? Okay.
for sure. There was always like some that wanted to be close or they were conscious about one that was in front or not. And I remember because I was traveling afterwards, and then on another moment, I was also doing a trail ride with horses, and I was asking the owner like, "What's the position of the horses in between?" And he said like, "No, the leader isn't here." And I was like,
That's not
okay,
possible. There's always
maybe
one.
there isn't, but there will be
Yeah.
something in between them. It's impossible. And I could really see things between the horses, how a few of them were always stick together, how another one was trying to belong but got always kicked out. And then there was the one that I was riding on, and he was just doing his own thing. He wasn't caring at all about the others. So I was really curious about the
Hmm.
positions too, because I said, okay, I can see some things, but I'm not so used to see those things. So it would be interesting to hear about the owner. But it was just like, no, there's no leader.
And do they follow then their human leader over the horse leader? Or if the other leader horse suddenly decides, I'm not listening to my human, guys, we're going back. Does everyone go back?
You will immediately see if one horse is like trying to go back, you can immediately see the horse's first instinct is following the
Yeah,
other, like the
yeah.
horse. So
Because
then you
they
need
know
to,
better. Yeah.
yeah, and then you really need to say like, okay, I know you can see this, but I have another plan. Today we're doing something different. We go there. And if you then have a good connection, he will follow you. But it you can see that it's immediately its first instinct. It makes sense.
Yeah, funny.
Yeah.
And I really think that we can learn a lot from spending more time with animals or kids, or to learn like around about your own animal nature, and yeah, getting aware of how that's always playing out, that you are always aware of both realities. Like on one hand
Mm-hmm.
you are the person who is leading yourself through life, and on the other hand you're also, yeah, yourself being led, and that also has feelings, and it's your body and your mind and all that. I really liked what you said about you relating to your own body, and how that
Mm-hmm.
has changed. And I also think that whenever the relationship with your body is not fully there, well, that's the animal part of you. So by,
You can feel
yeah,
it.
so
You
if you
can
get
feel that
started with that,
you're going
it will
crazy
understand you.
directions when you're not connected with it. You can just be like, no, I'm now on a place that I didn't want to be. And if I would have followed, because it's also your body is receiving so much information. So if you don't
Yeah,
listen to it, then it's like a dictator that says like, "Ah, I'm going that way while the whole group is protesting."
I
So
can see that if I follow my head the whole day, then somehow in the evening I'm not as happy as other days.
mhm.
And I don't know why, because I didn't listen along the way to the
Yeah.
other parts. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it can be just like, give me 5 minutes rest, and then maybe the rest of the day will be completely fine if you have listened to that little
Yeah,
moment.
that's a really hard one. I get that a lot. Specific question, like just lay down for a few minutes, and then I always say lay down, like,
What the fuck? Lay
yeah,
down.
and then do everything else later. No, but in the end, if you would do it, then you're like much happier because you followed your
Yeah,
instinct. Your
and
instinct was true.
often it's just like giving space to what's going on inside, and then you might find a solution like, okay, so the next 2 hours I'm gonna turn it around, and then it will go with the flow instead of my head thinking
Yeah,
like, and then it would be very effortlessly, but you don't take those 5 minutes down. It's something strange why we
yeah.
don't.
I find it very easy in the morning, like you say. You go for your walk in the morning. I actually go for a walk with my body in the morning. But besides that, like in the morning, it's very easy to listen to it. Like you haven't overridden it with anything.
Mm-hmm.
You're just like, oh, this is what needs to happen, and sometimes today I need to rest or something. But if it happens in the middle of the day, you
Ooh,
don't
that's
always
way more
hear it
challenging.
because you're focused on something else, and that's something, if you could really achieve it, because again you can say, oh, but I cannot because I am with people, or I am at work or whatever, but really it's because you're not willing to. Because if you're with people, you could also say, oh, I'm going to be alone for 5 minutes and I'll be
Yeah,
back,
and it's
and then I'll be
perfectly
back
fine.
better. Yeah.
I often go to the toilet on such a moment. And then you can just, even this like a little moment, I can feel, oh, this is going on. Okay. And then I can like go with a completely different mindset. Even if
Mm.
it's just like, okay, apparently this is a trigger in this conversation. I'm gonna leave it there for later on. I'm not gonna take it with me. Now I'm going back and I can be again like open and be like, okay, I'm happy to be here. But if I wouldn't do those little moments, but
Yeah.
it's super challenging because so easily you don't do it.
Well, the first step I think would be if we never take our phone to the toilet, and then
Yeah, I never do.
automatically you'll have those moments.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like, or waiting for a bus, or like
Yeah, that
those
I
moments
yeah,
where you
showering.
just, yeah, where you maybe feel bored. Those are the most interesting moments.
So that's probably one of the reasons why so many people I don't have that relationship anymore,
I think
because
so.
we don't have time to get bored, right? So everyone always has something for entertainment at any
Hmm.
moment.
While if you look at the at children, the moments they are bored are the most interesting moments, because then they start to invent things, and you can see mostly their real nature, like what is popping up. Is something that is very mind like, is moving, is it, or
Hmm.
like they always say that you can buy so expensive place and then you give them an empty box and they start playing with the box the whole afternoon, and it's super interesting what comes up in those moments.
Yeah. I've had for a while an idea like I would like to have 1 month where I would just say, okay, I'm gonna do that in every moment, and then, but I'm a bit worried that if I do that, I would end up just not making any money that month. So it would kind of be like a vacation. Or I also thought I'm gonna do that 1 hour a day, but then I find that really hard to do. To just say,
To being bored or
well,
to
yeah, I'm
reflecting.
gonna say so in that hour. I will just do nothing and wait, and then see what happens. What, but in the times that I've tried, nothing much happens because you expect it.
And I also think that if I would plan it in daily life 1 hour, it would maybe take me 1 hour to first get away from all the things in my head, all my
Yeah.
to-dos. All, like I would first still be in this
So it
moment.
would take you an hour to get bored,
Yeah.
and
So
then
it
then it
took
would
me an
just
hour to
start.
get bored, and then I would feel like, come on, are you bored already?
Yes,
I
that's
would
how it
put
happens.
pressure on it.
Exactly.
And well, what you need is having the time and the space to slowly feel your own rhythm. Like, how long does it take today to get away from everything that's in my head? And then while you have that moment, you still need emptiness, which is super
Yeah.
interesting to have this emptiness. And then only after a while, there were things, be things coming up.
Yeah. I'm still gonna try that, but I don't know when. I don't know. Well, thanks for the very interesting conversation. Um, could talk
Thank you
about
too.
that for hours, but maybe another time. We'll see. It was
Let's
really
see.
nice.
Thank you.